Hello, it's Helen Butler from Inspired People Solutions today, and welcome to another chat about working with HR managers in the coronavirus epidemic. I am delighted to be able to introduce Amy Phillips of Horizon Management Group today. You can check Amy's website out at horizonmg.com.au. But Amy and I have known each other now for a little while. I'm always the oldest one in the room, Amy, but I think we go back to when you were at John Hollanday's working in the HR team there, and we've both gallivanted off and travelled countries in that time, but always touched base within the HR space. And I'm really delighted to have Amy join us today. She's got some really great information to be able to share with us, particularly in relation to tips for managers and teams as they work remotely during the coronavirus epidemic specifically, but this is something that Amy's been working on with teams for a long time. Horizon Management Group are really great in helping with mobility and working remotely, and Amy's had some really good experience with that in the past. I think, did you work in the mobility space as well when you were working at John Holland? Is that right?
That's right. That was one of my last positions at John Holland before I left in the global mobility space. So it's and the teams thing's particularly interesting for me, just in terms of general management practices, whether people are in the office or working remotely.
Awesome. So I know I just probably stuffed up the intro there, but I want to say thank you, welcome, and I really appreciate your expertise. So would you like to just give us a little bit of a snapshot about you and your experience, and then we'll get straight into some really great info that you've got on tips for working remotely for managers and for teams today.
Yeah, sure. Well, firstly, thank you for having me on, Helen, and it's great to be in touch with you again. So my background has always been in HR, working in larger corporates and international companies in generalist HR positions, both from an operational perspective and working on some strategic initiatives as well. And then, yes, as you mentioned, I took some time out and travelled around the world, which was amazing. And since returning, I've spent more of my time working in consulting and working with small to medium-sized businesses. Most recently in sort of 2017-18, re-establishing Horizon Management Group and working with businesses to implement essential HR practices and processes to help managers manage their people well, and with a particular focus on giving them the skills to be able to do that and looking after their teams so they're performing and they're satisfied in what they're doing.
Perfect. We've been talking a little while in the past little while about coronavirus, and it's been wonderful how the HR community has really decided to step up and empower those practitioners that are at the front line. I think we spoke about when the week ending the 13th of March, we just got everybody home as fast as we could. And last week it was about, we've got to set you up remotely. And now it's like, well, how do managers manage remotely? And it was awesome talking with you about, you've got some really great tips, not only for managers on how to manage, but remotely, but just what do you do on a day-to-day basis when it comes to working remotely? And this might be really simple for some people, but it's really great to have it spelt out to you so you can cut through it all and find out what works for you and your team. So I wanted to ask you if you wouldn't mind running through your experience of what works when people go remote, how to help managers, I guess, navigate that path of getting the best out of their teams and have an understanding about how productivity can still flow during this time.
Yeah, of course, I'd love to. Because I think it's particularly interesting now in that what's happening now is actually going to shape the way in which we all work together in the future.
Yep.
So it's a really good opportunity for managers to put some even better standards in place that will contribute to the ongoing success of their teams and the business. And I recognise different teams and businesses are going through different stages of this and how they respond to it. And some have more flexibility and time to think about these things than others. Yep. So as you said, it is take what you can use and run with it. And there might be others that'll come into play later. Or you've already got this all down pat, in which case congratulations and hopefully you can share that news with everybody else and provide them the support as well. So I think probably the few things that I wanted to cover is one around amongst dealing with immediate operational and longer term planning challenges now. Now more than ever, effectively actually leading your teams and managing them through this period is with direction, and communication of your plans is going to be absolutely essential. So be as clear as possible as you can right now, and we recognise that's changing daily for many businesses and many teams. But in terms of managing people's day-to-day responsibilities, if you don't have clear ways of describing these already, then try to focus on the responsibilities of people, the result areas. We call them key result areas. And what I mean when I say that is talk about outputs rather than inputs. No one wants a laundry list of tasks outlined for them for their day or for their week. Give them tangible outputs of what they have to achieve, and then put some clear measures to those which actually describe what success looks like for that individual and for that responsibility. And then they can go away and work out what tasks need to be done in order to achieve it. So that's one of the things I've found really useful, whether people are working in the office or managers are leading a team of individuals remotely, just to be super clear on that.
And I completely agree with that. I think, you can sort of work around having not so clear expectations when you are in the office, because you can drop by someone's desk, or you can just go, hey, what did you mean by when you said that? But when you're working remotely or via video link, it's particularly, I think, important that you not only set those clear expectations, but make sure people understand. So maybe get them to repeat back, or what's your understanding on that? Because you don't want someone going off in the wrong direction, doing a task, and then it's not right, because it's not only a waste of time, but if everyone knows where the goalposts are and they can kick through it. So even though it might be a bit tedious, I think sometimes initially it's just good to probably make sure everyone's on board. Just ask those few more questions, drill down a little bit more so you make sure everyone's on the same page. Or if you're not sure someone's on the same page, get off that video call with your team and call that person and just run through things. So it's I think you are right. Clear expectations are everything anyway, but during this time it's really critical just to make sure everyone's on the same page as you. Your communication is absolutely critical in this space.
Yeah, and that responsibility, as you say, on the person sending the message, checking that the receiver has received it and understood it. That is the responsibility of that manager in many cases. So,
Definitely.
So I suppose moving on to perhaps the next tip that I wanted to talk through, which again many people might already have well under control, but that is this general trend of keeping in touch with teams, and how are we touching base with them and checking in. Managers have long been having daily or weekly whips, team meetings, whatever you'd like to call them. But managers who I've seen do this really well, whether they're operating in an agile project management environment or not, is those that adopt the concept of the daily stand-up or the huddle, which many people call them. And they adhere to these general principles which are defined within it. So it's an opportunity to do a quick check-in with everyone and to answer. The general principles are that they answer three key questions, this 3-question agenda. So one is what did I accomplish yesterday or since our last meeting? What am I working on today? And what are my roadblocks, or what's stopping me from achieving what I need to achieve, that I need to talk about with everyone in the team today? And that really keeps people focused. It's certainly, I know both from being a manager, but more so in terms of being a team member, it keeps you accountable and it makes you really driven to go, what am I going to report tomorrow? And again, focusing on outputs rather than, tasks that you ticked off. Yeah. So there's lots of articles out there with some really good tips on how to get creative with these as well. like picking a really unique time, like 8 minutes past the hour or something, so everyone's there on time and paying attention to it, which is incredibly frustrating, but it works. Or, you know, how you go about choosing whose turn it is next, and starting with an exercise. If we're all, you know, locked inside the house and we are doing these remotely, how do we actually, you know, get everyone's blood flowing? And of course, the idea is we stand up. So it keeps it short and purposeful. It stops people rambling, which we can all be capable of. And you're going to jump in and cut me off if you need to as well, Helen, on that note. And that it's all relevant as well. So everything that people say must be valuable to everyone that's on the call or in the room. Otherwise, we should take that next conversation offline. I'm
a massive fan of that, because it's funny, the team pressure keeps you accountable. It's funny that, you know, deadline driven, we get things done, we get more conscientious, but, you know, you talked about the third point, the roadblocks, and that's something that's really interesting now, because I think with Victorian schools closing and a message going around about keep your kids home if you can, there's going to be people who have to feel comfortable to talk about their roadblocks, and whether that means chunking up their day because they're sharing caring responsibilities with a partner, or just having the confidence to say to your team, I'm going to be able to do this, but I won't be able to do it till like 8 p.m. till 10 p.m. at night, and just making that commitment to have that communication open in your team makes it such a more valuable exercise, because then everybody knows what's happening rather than sitting at the other end of the VC or their computer waiting for work. So if you've got this is what these stand-ups or huddles or, you know, are for, is for you to be as open and transparent as your team, because teamwork is critical now. So I'm a bit of a fan of, you know what, guys, you've got to lay it on the table and trust that your team will empower you and equip you to get the job done and get the productivity going. But we have to be flexible in our approach to, I think, a little bit more how we're working, because other people will have other commitments. And I used to work with a guy who used to work well from midnight till 8 a.m. And I wouldn't see him in the office all day. But he was a genius in those hours. He would punch out like 2 days worth of work. So you just got to be a little bit more flexible in allowing people to work the best as they can in the time that they've got allocated to them. So I think, you know, the number 3 roadblocks will come out from questions 1 or 2. So they're really, I like those questions to have at your stand-up. Well done. Thanks.
No worries. And that's a beautiful segue to the next area I wanted to discuss around people's preferred ways of working that you mentioned as well, Helen, because the effective teams need to acknowledge the different ways in which people operate and the strengths that different individuals bring to the team, how you can cover each other's weaknesses, in particular during these times as well. We're all under a lot of pressure and we'll handle those things differently. And there's some different models to explain how effective teams can work and how important particular team roles are. And I think it's particularly acute now that many managers have been given this added challenge of managing a remote team. So one way of viewing effective teams is to consider a balance of having these action-oriented doers, ideas-producing thinkers, and people-centred carers. So we talk about this doers, thinkers and carers model. And effective teams need a balance of all of these roles. So as an example, if one team is full of doers who are all head down, focused on ploughing forward, but not constantly reassessing if it's the right path forward, then this can impact the team's effectiveness. Are they actually really working on the right things? Or what if your team is missing some thinkers? Then you risk the right ideas won't get put into action because you don't have people coming up with the new ideas and plans and ways of thinking about solutions, which thinkers are typically really good at. If another team has too many carers, as an example, who are all, going home happy, they've enjoyed their time in the office, but they haven't achieved anything because they're too worried about the team chemistry, this can also impact that team's effectiveness. So effective leaders know when to draw on the different roles and understand each of those different roles within their team and how to draw on them. So there's some really practical steps that I often work with managers on that they can take to make the most effective use of the people in their teams. Some of the things are thinking about, do the doers know what has to be done, and do they have the resources to be able to get on and do it? The thinkers being challenged so that they can come up with innovative ideas and plans, and are they actually being heard as well, I suppose, is another key thing.
Yep.
And then are you using the carers to take care of the individuals and the team relationships, which, again, even more important during these times when we've got individuals, some people are at home on their own and need that check-in. And it doesn't all need to fall on you as a manager. You can utilise your resources effectively to make sure somebody is looking after those sides of things as well. And to realise that the full potential of the team, we need to be able to understand each other's preferred ways of working. And that goes across the team as well, not just the manager knowing it.
Yep.
How are we communicating it and understanding that across the team? So, that's been particularly useful. And I suppose that in terms of putting it into action, some managers can use a bit of a grid. If you imagine and I can send this out to your listeners if you want, around a simple table with each of your team members, what you believe their role to be. And this isn't an exact model. There are different profiling models we can use to get more precise, but many of us will resonate with whether we're a doer, a thinker, or a carer just through some of those descriptions, and put in place a bit of an action plan as to how you're going to best utilise them and draw on their strengths in your team, at least over the next couple of weeks, and if not, months ahead as well.
I think when you first mentioned that to me, I was like, that is a really great way to describe how a team should function. But if you have all three of those elements in different members of your team, it just brings about cohesiveness. And if we all can think about what elements of our personality or work life are in those spaces, and then you can allocate extra little responsibilities, because during this time, it's a great time for the thinkers to, we are forced to think differently about how our roles will operate and be a bit more innovative in our approach, and to be able to have that conversation and then get the doers who are task-oriented to just go out, forge that path ahead, but also to have the carers make sure everybody's okay within the team and making sure there's cohesiveness and communication, that everyone's cared for. Just makes perfect sense, and I think that's the thing that we were talking about. Some of these things are so easy to think about once we've heard them, but not having heard about them, you just go, oh, wow, like you can take this away and talk to your team about this going forward, and sort of, I guess, allocate sort of paths that people can go on, and it frees them up to be a little bit more creative as they work from home. Is a really, really good and empowering thing. And I think in these times, people need to be empowered. People need to have responsibility. So it's a very good message to be able to go, this is your little special task during this time. And it just allows people to contribute a little bit more, I think, which is nice.
Absolutely. Well, I certainly do hope it helps, and I have seen it work, and it's even just a good excuse to start a conversation with someone about these things as well, so that everyone is involved and can have some input into what they might, given those strengths, be able to take on. I suppose they're the sort of general 3 tips of the day, if I can call them that, in terms of setting those expectations for your team members and checking in with them and keeping in touch through your daily stand-ups and other means to keep them working and that productivity and keeping them motivated. And then considering those different roles that you have within the team and using their strengths to cover each other's weaknesses so that they can understand each other and how they can recognise their preferred work styles and everyone feel that cohesiveness, as you say. If we can get that balanced team, that's ideal. If anyone's in a position to reallocate members, then certainly thinking about those roles as you do that as well is really important.
Yeah, beautiful. Amy, thank you so much for your time and for running through some tips on how to best work remotely and give us some ideas about team cohesiveness and responsibility. you can find Amy at Horizon Management Group, and again, that website is horizonmg.com.au if you'd like to be in touch or get, when Amy talked about the doers, thinkers and carers, she's got some information she could impart with you. So by all means, reach out and touch base with her, and I'm sure she'd be happy to share any information that would help you just manage this fluid and flexible working environment a little bit better. So thank you, Amy, for joining us today.
No worries. Thank you for having me, Helen, and all the best to everyone out there dealing with these unique times and the challenges it's presenting. So
indeed,
I hope that helps.
And don't forget, you can find me at inspiredpeople.com.au. We've got a podcast tab up, and we've got a Pandemic Partners tab up, which has got a whole heap of resources that are available to you free of charge. Go on and use as much as you can, because I think I join with Amy in saying we're all here to help you through this time. And so thank you for listening. Have a great day, everybody.